Jeff, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here. We've known each other for some time now, and I'm pretty stoked that we get to do this, which is have a conversation about some real stuff that I don't think many people say out loud. But in an age of AI, it's important to have these kinds of conversations, and your career is one that is multifaceted in the sense that you've always had an entrepreneurial bent, and yet you've always been at the highest levels of corporate at the same time. And I think there's something to be said about having the opportunity to speak to someone like you who did walk away from that and stepped into a world of wellness and really honing in on the human experience, and more importantly, just on feeling good about being alive and being who you are in an age of constant information flow, and the list goes on. So I'm like, okay, where do we get started? Right? Where do we do all this? So there's an idea of creative resilience I want to discuss with you that I think makes the most sense. So why don't we deconstruct the transition that's taken place in your life from January 2024 to now? How do you move from a singular corporate entity to thought partnering and digital nomadism? Because you're living the life right now. You're in a yurt and there's this interesting backdrop here. So talk to me. Corporate to where I am now. What was some of the thinking there or experiences that happened there?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on today. It's very exciting to tell the story, and hopefully, it is inspirational. And my life is very much focused on wellness and well-being right now, and the project I'm working on. So, I think all of this also ties into well-being and finding what lights you up in your life. Like you said, there's a theme of aliveness in the work that I do, but the theme of aliveness came from me living a very alive life. And in fact, that's the name of the company that I started. It's Ella Vivo, which is living a live life. So yeah, and I've been through a few cycles of this. So when you even talk about that entrepreneurial bent, even in my early corporate days, back when I started my career in the early 2000s, it was always entrepreneurial work, even in a big corporation. And then I went out on my own and I started working with other entrepreneurs. And then I got brought back into an entrepreneurial venture, which grew into a small business, which I was running an organization of over 150 people, close to 200 people. And then in January of 2024, like you said, there was just a moment where I was like, okay, I feel like I've reached this level with this company. It was someone else's dream, and it was time to go out back out on my own. And something that I've really enjoyed doing is working with uh, individuals and helping them to get to where they need to be using my life experience, using my career experience, and helping them find shortcuts. And so that they don't make the same mistakes I made. Part of my career is I've had great successes, I've had great failures, and anything that I can do to package those up and to put them into frameworks and helping people to create systems that avoids or shortcuts a lot of the things that I've done. That's really what I'm aiming to do in the work that I'm doing now. And I've gravitated toward healers and wellness practitioners because that's just who's in my network. Those are the people that I've kind of naturally connected with, and they need it as much as anybody. And that last job that you were referring to was in the traditional healthcare system, which, as most people know, the American healthcare system is one of the biggest disasters on the face of the earth. So being in there and seeing what's happening, and both in the clinical sense and the business sense, and just the way that even politics affects it and money affects it, and then seeing this other world that's still been, I'll say, largely unscathed by it. There's a big opportunity here to actually bring healing to people in a different way. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
really answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. You alluded to all the things, all the data points we needed to move forward. It's so cool that you stepped in the direction of what many people like to call alternative medicine, even though I really think it's the first medicine you should have before. If it's not an emergency, it should be regular and first medicine as opposed to what most people turn to, which is all the other stuff that is clearly not designed in a way to help us or support us and our well-being, especially in an age where we've got screens, information constantly flowing. I think at some point I even remember talking to you and you had like a business with supplements. Like this was always something you were looking at yourself, a space that you were heading towards. But what finally really was it the politics that finally pushed you over the edge and you just said, I can't do this anymore. I've got to do what I know I need to do for me.
Yeah, I think a big part of it was actually there was a lot of frustrations working in the healthcare system because, what's really crazy to me is that most of the money that goes into the healthcare system doesn't actually go into healing. It doesn't go into medicine. It doesn't go into healing. It goes into all of the machinations of what it takes to get care. So when I employed, like I said, I employed, between 150 and 200 people, and most of the people were not the people that were delivering care. Most of those bodies were there to do the administrative work, to get pre-authorizations and to do the billing and to check the coding and to do the appeals and interface with the insurance companies and do the scheduling, all the things that really are, secondary to the medicine, but they're primary when it comes to the effort and the cost and the energy that we put into it. Whereas when you go see a healer, a lot of times it's like, you text the healer and say like, "Hey, do you have time to see me this week?" And they're like, "Yeah, come Friday at 2." And then you show up and you feel better, right? Immediately. And there's not all of the extra like, "Oh, I have to wait 6 weeks for my insurance company to decide if this is right for me or if they're willing to pay for it," or, and a lot of the cost that you pay goes into that, and which is really frustrating. And going back to the beginning, right? Like I've always been a participant in well-being, and I've been very curious about wellness practices. One of my core values, I think, is even curiosity. So I've always experimented and tried different aspects of wellness, all the way from the time when I was, young in college. I did everything that I could possibly do in. We had a PE requirement, which is very unusual among colleges and universities these days. But I had to do 5 of them in my 4 years at the college, and I finished them before the end of my first year because I just wanted to try everything. And so it started that curiosity. And as I got into the corporate world and I started working at a big company and traveling around, it was harder and harder to take care of myself because, there's the grind and there's the commute and there's getting on and off of planes and being in hotels, and it's hard to eat well and it's hard to find time to exercise and all of the other things, right? And there's even way more than that now, like that I've discovered over the years around, how are you taking care of your energy? How are you taking care of your mental well-being? How are you taking care of your emotional well-being? All these other things that play into it. And so over the years, I just discovered like, you need to find ways to build this in. And so I started my first entrepreneurial venture was starting a company that did fitness training online. And I
Oh,
started it in 2010, which was 10 years too early for when it was ready. If,
yeah.
if I started in 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020,
You
like
would have been killing it.
I'd,
Yeah.
I'd be a trillionaire right now. So, but it was a little bit too early for its time. Like people were still like, "What's an app?" Like, which is a crazy thing to think that that was in so much in our recent history that like, what's an app? That it was just a little bit too early. But it kind of planted the seed. And then over the years, I would get inquiries from friends or people that I was introduced through my network, like, "Hey, can you help me get something started?" So I helped. Actually, I'm staying in a yurt, as you mentioned here. I'm on my friend's property. That they have this beautiful yurt that I can come and stay in as a digital nomad now. But they started a company called Real Wellness, which was doing herbalism and a modern form of
Oh,
herbalism. And then they started a company that they do now. It's called Leela, and it's an astrology app that helps people kind of put a framework around the different aspects of their life and talk at it through through an astrological lens, which a lot of people are think of it through the New York Times little
the
horoscope that you see at the
Zodiac.
bottom,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a very, very different approach the way that they do it here. Um, and 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 so I started working with them. I had a friend that had a cannabis company who was looking at, how can I bring the wellness of the cannabis plant to people? I have a friend who's an energetic shaman who was like, "Hey, can you help me, figure out how to run my business better?" And it just happened very naturally. And so I've always had my finger in this well-being space. And and then very similarly, a doctor came to me and who I was introduced to through a mutual contact, and that's how I ended up running this healthcare company. But the reason I took it on was not because I wanted to go work in healthcare, but he had this idea of infusing wellness and well-being into a
Oh,
traditional healthcare environment. And I'll just tell you, it's very, very hard to do something
yeah.
like that because the system is not built for it. And the system is actually built to make those things extraordinarily hard. And so I think that, going into it with this aspiration of like we can change the world, we can bring wellness into the healthcare system, which is really a sick care system, and we can bring these other things in. And then, it always comes down to money, it always comes down to insurance, it always comes down to patients' willingness to pay. And even though we try different things in our process of talking to the patients and giving them information, and even though we weren't necessarily being compensated for it, we're like, but this is going to be better, we're going to get better outcomes, the insurance companies will appreciate it. It's an uphill battle. And I think at some point I just saw like, okay, I'm in the system now, and it's very frustrating. And in fact, there was a one of the CEOs of one of the big uh, insurance companies, who I won't name. I ended up writing a letter because they kept denying our claims, and I was like, "We're doing incredible work for your patients and for your members, and we're getting better outcomes than anybody else." And basically, she told me to go fuck off. And
Wow.
uh, I was surprised I got a letter back, first of all, because a lot of these insurance company executives are very arrogant. But I did get a response back, and it was basically like, "Fuck off. We'll pay you if we want to pay you." And it was really, really, really like one of those moments when I got this letter. I was so angry, and I was like, I want to fix the system, but at the same time, like, I'm not even the tail wagging the dog. I'm like a little hair on the end of the tail, like trying to wag the dog. And at some point you just realize like, okay, where can I make a bigger impact? So part of that was just saying like, where can I make a bigger impact? And as I got connected and worked more closely with these healers and wellness practitioners who are actually doing real work, and really are looking at people as whole people, and not looking to mask symptoms, but rather to look at how do we solve the problems that people are having at the deepest level, then that's where I wanted to spend my time and my attention and my energy, because I think there's a much bigger return on that investment.
I mean, it's ironic how the only other industry other than the healthcare industry that is run so poorly and yet still no one can do anything about is like the government, let's say the US government in particular, right? Like those are the two big open secrets of like, yeah, there's a lot of fraud and back rubs and deals being made, and we're all just kind of living in it. It's your world, we're living in it, and it sucks. And so I'm actually really inspired to hear that your whole original mission for even stepping back into corporate after you were pretty much done with it was like, maybe we can make a difference here. Only to see the red tape firsthand, but you did good work when they wrote a letter to you explicitly trying to tell you, like, no, but you're on their radar enough for them to write back to you. And that's important because, look, I'm a gigger, I'm a freelancer, I'm constantly moving myself, and my idea of self care is a burrito or a slice of pizza. Like, that's you know what I mean? And I live off caffeine, which is probably also really bad. It's probably why I gained 30 pounds. These are things that people are they're living, whether they're in corporate now or gigging. It's kind of the line is blurring here as AI creeps up on everyone's, white collar work and everything else. And so it's never been a better time to have people who are championing methods that shouldn't be seen as alternatives, but the first things you should be looking into before you start, I don't know, taking ibuprofen 5 times a day or whatever you might be doing, right? So why don't you walk me through then? You said, okay, I'm getting away from all this. We understood that much. And then you looked at your network and you said, yeah, there's something to be done here. Now, you've kind of told me a little bit about these retreats that you're putting together. Is it like a panel of all these awesome and amazing people, and people get to join this experience and be a part of all this, or am I misinterpreting what you were sharing with me?
Well, it's really about community building and enabling what you just described, because right now the biggest issue, right, is that wellness practitioners, healers are working in isolation, right? A lot of them are just single practitioners. Some of them work out of even their homes or like a home office. Some of them do have an office space. A couple of them, come together with two other people and share a space. But a lot of times it's just, and they're doing this really incredible work, and they're doing it by themselves. And a lot of it is happening in a vacuum. It's all like word of mouth. And even the healers and wellness practitioners themselves don't know who else is doing things in the world around them, that are similar to them. In fact, it's funny because I go to some of these uh, practitioners for my own well-being, for my own self-care, and they ask me, "Hey, do you know somebody that does this?" I have this great chiropractor slash uh, homeopathic doctor slash craniopathist slash a lot of other things. She's a Reiki master. She's a bunch of other things as well, and she's blended this together. She has a really incredible work. And one day I'm just laying there and she's like, "Hey, I have a client that needs a great somatic coach. Do you know somebody that does it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know a great one." So she's like, "Oh, can you give me the contact information?" And then I was working with another one who's like, "Hey, do you know anyone that does really good acupuncture?" And I was like, "I know one of the best in the world who's, 40 minutes away from here." So, you know, I've been naturally doing this and making these connections and helping them figure out their business and making the connections to other people in the space and helping them to kind of look at what is the future. Um, and and it's just happened very naturally. So it's just unfolded itself. Like I'm not even trying
Yeah.
so much as to like create something. It's just revealing itself in the conversations that I'm having and the interactions that I'm having. And one of the other things is, one day I was driving to that same wellness practitioner, and I was halfway there, and I was like, I just had this like startled moment, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna die someday. And I know that's a very
Oh,
morbid thought, but I was like, if she dies, who's gonna put me back together? Because I've never found anybody that has, found the right magic to put me back together in the way that she does. And I was like, and it wasn't really necessarily about her person. It was the fact that she's discovered an incredible blending of methodologies together that's incredibly effective. And the thing that really scared me in that moment was like, this is going to die with her. And so I walked into her office, and the first thing I said to her was like, "Oh my god, what's gonna happen when you die?" And she looked at me like, "What? What are you talking about?" Obviously, she wasn't privy to all of the other previous thoughts in my head that led me there, but then I explained it to her, and she's like, like, I've been starting to think about that too, because I think she's in her 60s, and, she plans to practice for another 15 or 20 years probably, but, you never know, and there's
yeah.
a lot of people like this, and there's a lot of people that have been in my network over the last few decades, that I've talked to recently. I'm talking to a guy who um, does this incredible emotional release. He's very famous in the wellness world, particularly in Europe, and he's written a book and he's done all these things. And he's like, I'm 80 years old now, and I don't know what to do with it. So we're meeting in a couple weeks, and there's a couple that I worked with in Chicago that are in their early 70s, and they're still doing workshops and they're still doing one-on-one, and they're doing all of these great things. They've written a book. They've created an institute for the work that they do, and I talked to them, and they're like, yeah, we want to travel, we want to start slowing down a little bit, but we've done all this stuff, and now we're like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah.
And at the other end of it, I work with all of these people who are, in the first 2 years, 5 years, decade of their career, and they're learning and they're hungry to learn, and they want to figure out what's the current state of affairs in wellness and in healing. And instead of everybody starting over, it would be great to have a mechanism where people can start to pass the baton. So, I start here and I get to here. And what's happening right now is in the current world, it's like, okay, everybody starts back at zero. Everybody starts back at zero and gets up to here. But what happens if the baton is passed now and now we start building from here? And then that baton is passed and then we start building from here. And so you can see that there's in this multimodal wellness world, this multi-dimensional, this multi-practice world, that's not happening. It happens a little bit in certain, I would say, verticals, like chiropractic is a more
Right.
established function. So
Yeah.
there is a chiropractic convention you can go to, right, and learn about the latest chiropractic practices. But how is chiropractic combined with homeopathy? How is chiropractic combined with Reiki? How is chiropractic combined with all these other things that are with acupuncture? I had a brilliant practitioner I used to go to in Chicago who was a chiropractor and an acupuncturist, and she's combined other things since I even saw her. Um, but but they don't teach that at the chiropractic convention. They're very narrowly focused, and I think that the brilliance of this world is that they look at it from such a broad perspective, and nobody's trying to pull all of those pieces together. So
You're 100% right. There's a huge missing infrastructure that seems to be in place for what we call traditional healthcare, right? But then you see it went too far and has all this bureaucracy that gets in the way of things. And then so then we
and
have,
hyper specialization, right?
yeah,
There's somebody that is a specialist in the tip of the hair in your nose now, and they don't even realize that it's connected to a nose, it's connected to your face, it's connected to your body, that's connect. So there's so much hyper specialization. I'm exaggerating, by the way, a little bit, but
right, right,
to
right.
make my point. But there's so
I
much hyper
started getting self conscious.
specialization.
Like, what's wrong with my hair, nose hair?
But there's so much hyper specialization now that people forget that we're all connected together, and that we're not just physical beings either, but we're mental beings, emotional beings,
I
relational
was just gonna
beings,
say, yep,
sexual beings.
yep.
We live in an environment. We have social contacts, and all these other pieces that make us up, that connect us together, that connect us to something greater. And it's not just like the cells in our body, but there's a lot that comes from energy, and I think a lot of us uh, don't realize that. And I think the traditional healthcare system, or it's not really traditional, the conventional healthcare system, is really uh, not focused on looking at all, bringing all of those pieces together and integrating them.
I mean, for there are plenty of people who will sit here and just to throw on devil's advocate, will sit here and listen and go, yeah, but woo woo and this and that. But the fact is, one of these days, one of them's going to need a chiropractor or something like that they don't even know is going to hit them. Many of them probably need somatic release and other things as well. You know what I mean? And so these are all terms that are vaguely defined in pop culture and mainstream culture of just people, and especially in America, right? there's this there's this connotation with these kinds of things. So there's a cultural reset that needs to happen with how things are viewed. There's this missing architecture that you seem to be at the crux of, and more than capable of creating, both creating an institution for legacy and transfer, right? But then also being able to create the network effect of like system that can suggest you the provider that you need. And in my head, as you're bringing all this up, I can already see the workings that are taking shape and how it needs the vessel. Just like I can pull up and be like, I'm a part of this health network, and I can pull up the directory and look things up. And if not, I can call and ask questions. And navigating just regular healthcare is a pain in the behind, right? So if we're looking at being able to create this, you also have the benefit of having worked in that and knowing what is terrible about that to create a user experience, a customer experience that far outweighs and exceeds in terms of quality and experience what people can expect from something like that. And you stand uniquely positioned to educate people on what these terms are. I can already see the social media strategy now. All you need to do is reinvigorate and change the paradigm of how people actually see those things. When I hear modal, right, and I'm all left brained and very traditional, I was like, oh, modalities. And, there's a lot of the. I had a lot of interviews with coaches who had specialties and things of that nature, and a lot of the times, the minute someone hears it's a different modality, they don't know what that means. They don't understand it, and it goes above their head, or they think it's woo woo, they think it's new age. But the thing is, half the time, this is rooted in like traditional Chinese medicine and other things, and it's
Right.
actually old age. And so I want to hear what some of your thoughts are on this idea of re-educating and resetting the culture on how people view these things, because it's going to be probably the bigger lift than creating the architecture and infrastructure to support and network everything that's connected here, all the nodes, is the changing of the way it's viewed. And I think there's part of and I don't know how true this is, I could be way off the mark here, but there's someone in the administration that I think is trying to push for health first, as opposed to what is obviously a problem, which is the healthcare system we've always had. Although even that is a double-edged sword with their own PR that they need to work on, right? And so I just want to hear your thoughts on all the things I just broke down there. Like, how do you think you're going to be approaching all this? Do you intend to build the entire thing yourself, or do you have people in mind? Where do you live with that?
Well, yeah, let me first just, clarify one thing. Like, I am absolutely not against conventional healthcare. It has its place. It has a very important place, right? Like, if I'm in a car accident today, I'm absolutely going to an emergency room. I'm not going to a
Right.
shamanic healer. Like, let's be clear about that. If I break a bone, I'm going to an orthopedic doctor, right? I mean, I absolutely am not against the conventional healthcare system, but I think that it doesn't live in a vacuum. And I think you have to, and a lot of people I think are scared to do this. I had a friend who recently went through cancer treatment, and a lot of people put a lot of faith into this conventional healthcare system because they're doctors and because they have, MD or DO after their name, and so they put a lot of stake into what they say, and I'd suggested to her, like, please, go see a couple of alternative providers. And I'm not telling you not to do chemo. I'm not telling you not to do radiation. I'm not telling you to not do what your oncologist is telling you to do, but rather look at what are some other things that you can to support your body, your soul, your energy, your everything else that's taking a hit during this healing process, to help you get through it better. But I think a lot of people are just absolutely scared to venture into this because of what you said, because there's no structure, because is it woo woo, is because it's scary, and we've been conditioned to believe that because somebody has two letters after their name, MD or DO, that oh, they're the authority on our bodies, on our souls, on our physical beings, on our minds, on all of those things that I was telling you about. When in fact I don't think it's the case. So the approach that I'm taking is step one is bringing together all the people that are doing this really incredible work, because they're doing incredible work, like I said, they're very scattered. So right now it's just like, okay, I can send you to one person for this, I can send you to one person for that, but that person knows people, that person knows. So there's a network that's out there right now that's just not connected together. There's a community of these practitioners. So this first step is to bring them together and to get critical mass. Once there's critical mass, and this is where you're saying, like, okay, there's AI coming into the picture, right? AI is not going to replace them. AI is never going to replace them, because you need healers, you need people who are doing hands-on, you need people who are doing work in the quantum field, you need people who are guiding and coaching and leading people through a healing process, that will never, in my mind, be taken over by AI. However, as a tool, AI can help. And like I said, people ask me all the time, hey, I'm having this issue, or I need this type of a practitioner. Who do you know, or who should I go see? Even before we started this call, you asked me a question about
Yeah,
yourself, and I
yeah,
was like, oh,
yeah.
I know the perfect person to send you to. So what I'm actually in the process of doing right now is trying to figure out, how do I think about this when people ask me that question, and how do I extract my own logic from my brain, because then I can train an AI to be like, okay, when Phil or somebody says, like, "Hey, I'm having this issue. What do I do?" I can train the AI to, like, find the right people to send someone like you to, and to be able to point people in that right direction. So AI becomes a tool now, but it doesn't become the replacement for
Right.
the actual healing work. So the first part is to get all these healers together, get all the incredible work that they're doing, and really distill it down and understand, like, what do they do, and what dimensions do they address? What type of healing work do they do? What kind of conditions can they help with? Get it all together, and then build the logic to be able to help find these right matches. And in the conventional healthcare world, we have that, right? You go in and you're like, oh, I'm having, like, tough breathing and my heart is beating funny. Okay, go see a cardiologist, right? Or, oh, my wrist is hurting. I broke my bone. There's something off. I got carpal tunnel. Go see uh, an orthopedic. And so we have an algorithm there, um, but we don't have the algorithm in the wellness world. So, like, that's really a big part of putting this together, and leading to what the result is that you're going after here, is really giving people that comfort, that they're going after the right people, because I think part of it is like, they know what they know, and what they don't know sometimes is scary.
Yeah, I mean, we need a Jeff's list, right? Just like Craigslist, we need a Jeff's list that we can just go to, look up in Los Angeles and, be able to find what we're looking for. And we need terms, right? Like I think half the it's true that you could even look at a doctor like a shaman, one that isn't really generously sharing their energy with you or when they see you, right? But the fact remains that then there's the alternative. I think we need like nomenclature that makes it feel more medical. Because a lot of people are scared of what they don't know. Yet these are the same people who will then go to Burning Man, or they'll go to a shaman for some peyote experience, and there's nothing wrong once you want to have some psychedelic experience. And yet that's all tapping into the same ethos of humanity being more than just what it is, what we think it is, right? And so there's all the doors are there. They're just not being presented in a way that makes them feel like it's should be taken seriously, except for the people who do live generally very sensitive and empathic lives, and they're really tuned in on who they are, and they don't have a problem with any of those things, right? And so it's just it's interesting that half the battle is trying to make it palatable to the people who need it the most, probably, right? Versus the other people who are already friendly to the idea and open to it. And it's a really unique challenge. And even hearing it, I want to find a way to help support you make this possible. Because yeah, like before we were talking, I remember you had said something along this. I don't know why people always feel like they have to suffer, and I thought that was such a great line because it's true. Because of the way traditional healthcare has treated me, I'm like, oh, I don't want it to be too expensive. I'll just live with it. I'll try to figure it out myself. You're like, just go. It's not beyond your reach, and you don't have to suffer. I know the perfect person. Just go. And I'm like,
Right.
you know what? What am I complaining about? Do I want to keep living with this daily weird dizziness that I'm feeling, or can I get someone to help me with that and be done with it, and I can move on with my life? And then from there recommend them to anybody, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Is there are things
Exactly.
that don't require an emergency. This isn't a car crash issue, right? We don't need to half the reason I feel like traditional healthcare is bogged up and not able to move is there's a lot of people there who are not in medical emergencies, and they're clogging it up, and the list goes on, and it's probably multi-threaded anyways. I don't want to open that can of worms, right? But I'm excited about what you're proposing as a future for what you're trying to create. And
And I want to say something to what you were just talking about as well. Like a lot of it has to do with the language. So
yeah,
back, as I said, I had this online fitness company. As I was working with the fitness trainers, and they're all well trained, right? And they know and they can name every muscle by its scientific name. And you know what? When I go and see a trainer, I don't give a fuck what the what the muscle name is that I'm working on. I just want to know like that I'm going to be able to move better, that I'm going to be able to get stronger, whatever my goal is, right? Some people lose weight,
yeah,
some people gain muscle, whatever happens to be. I just want to know that I can get to that goal. I don't need to know the name of the muscle, and I don't need to know
right.
the technical terms.
I don't
So
need the
I
miraculous hibaculous and
All right, exactly, exactly. So
not real
I
words,
said
by the way.
exactly. So, but what I would tell them is to use grandma English. Like, explain this to me as if I was your grandmother, and in a way that I would understand unequivocally. So don't give me like we need to like use the supinated whatever. Like they use these terms, and I'm like this means nothing to me. Talk to me like a person. And I think that's also part of what it is when people become very skilled at what they do, they need to use the language to prove something, and I think that actually works against them in a lot of cases. Recently, this happened again, right? I have a friend who's a yoga teacher, and he asked me to help him prepare for this special workshop that he was doing. So, I went and I was working with him. I was like, okay, tell me what you're going to do. And he's like, oh, and I'm going to do this. And he started using all of the, Sanskrit yoga terms. And I was like, okay, listen, I vaguely know these words because I've read about it. Like I've been involved in yoga. I've done yoga for, 20 plus years now, 25 plus years now. So, I hear these terms, but honestly, like I filter them, and I can
Yeah,
explain to you what's happening in very plain English, and then it resonates. But when you're like, "Oh, we're doing this, kriya, this thing, this," and you use this specialized language, which is great if you're a practitioner. It's great for you to learn, but the
sure.
important part, I think, for wellness practitioners and healers to access people and to make it less woo woo and to make it more practical is in very plain terms, what can I do for you? And so when I've started working with people and we start explaining it in those terms, then people are much more open to it. So I think part of it is that. I think part of it is just speaking the same language.
Yeah,
So
100%. The equivalent of hearing a doctor talk about your thoracic whatever, is hearing someone say, "And now I have this new modality that I've developed through Cupid's bow pose," and you're like, "What is going on? Just show me the movement, right?" And really, what
right,
it's doing is it's opening your chest up and removing the tension from the back, and you're like, "Oh,
right,
that I can do." I don't know if I could do Cupid's bow pose, but I can definitely open up my chest. And it's true though, because there are people who have, I was on entrepreneur.com at some point and I interviewed them, and they were this coach that was supposed to help you manifest, and they were very normal. And then when we hit record, they turned into this personality that they have. It's like a spiritual channeler. And I was like, for a second there, I just caught myself and I was like, oh, I'm just going to pretend this is the way it was the whole time we were talking. And I was able to let them do their thing. Funny enough, for me, the experience was really off putting, but then I watched the recording and it didn't feel the same way. It actually came across pretty decent. But in my head, I was like, wow, just as a person experiencing someone do that switch or suddenly turn into that person, I don't think it was necessary, but it does help sell. And I understand there's like a mystique to it. Martial arts does this a lot, even in martial arts, and they're working with pressure points, and this is coming into acupuncture, and a lot of all of it is very scientific, and yet you got to know about like the crane and the cultural aspect of things, and all that is cool. But really, like you said, grandma English goes a long way. Songwriting is no
right.
different. You have to
It,
reach Rebecca in Tucson while she's getting breakfast ready for her 7 children. Those are the kinds of people you're addressing, and you don't need to tell
exactly.
them about Dantians and whatever else is going on, right? Are we talking the same language here?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And when you're training and when you're working with other practitioners, go
Cool.
crazy. Use the language, like that's how the tradition is passed down. But when you're speaking to somebody who's coming to do the healing work, like that's where you have to be the translator. You need to
Yeah.
translate from Dantian to English, right? Like
Right.
how do you explain this to somebody in an English? Like, if you're a qigong master, great. Be a qigong master and know every word that is passed down through the tradition. Read the text, understand it thoroughly, and really embody it. But then when you talk to somebody who's not at that level, that's where you have to make it accessible for them. And I think that's where people sometimes get lost, right? I never told the
Yeah.
trainers like, don't go training and don't not know
Yeah.
those words, don't not understand the muscle systems, don't not understand how they connect together, but understand it, but then translate it to somebody that hasn't been through all of that training, who doesn't know that vocabulary, who isn't at that same level as you, because you need to invite them into that space and you need to do it in a way that makes it more accessible. So that's what I'm saying. I want to be really clear that.
No, I think it's 100%. There's major importance in being able to maintain tradition and cultural and maintaining it true. I do not think that a person who's going to be a customer of your services needs to be initiated into the culture to benefit from the wellness that's available through those arts and practices, right? And that's where creating some kind of new nomenclature universally, and mapping out the pathology for all that, and being able to put it in its own medical index for people, for a wellness index, if you will, is going to be important. So we need a wellness index. We need an architecture infrastructure that supports the network effect of these amazing practitioners. And then we need some kind of institution for handing off the baton. Those are the three big uh, uh, obstacles. And they're really paper obstacles more than anything, because it's just a matter of putting it together, because it all exists already, right? And then
Yeah.
for the practitioners themselves to take a step back for a second, and hear what we're trying to say about the language that's being used, and how the mysticism itself, while on one end might help with marketing, on the other end is hindering with the explosion of the impact they can have on people by just loosening up a bit on some of that language, and keeping the end customer in mind. Did I
Right.
understand so far what we're talking about?
Yeah, yeah. And I want to talk about too, because I think you're kind of hitting on this here as well. Like when we talk about this, I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles. I'm a nomad now, so I'm in different places. I still spend a decent amount of time in Los Angeles as well. But like I think when you're in places like that where there's a yoga studio every corner, and you can access all of these, the farmers market and the yoga studio, and you can see drive down La Cienega, and there's the Chakra Center, and like
Yeah,
all these different things that you see, like
pretty
we're
LA.
exposed to this. But as I've been traveling around, like the impetus actually for me to travel around was I was working with clients, and I was on Zoom most of the time, sitting at my dining table in Venice, and I realized like I could be sitting at any dining table around the world and meeting people and having new experiences, and so I had the ability to do that, and so that's why I decided to become a nomad. But I didn't realize at the time what it was also opening up as I was building this community, as I was building this network, was being able to get to different places and try different modalities that I never experienced before. And as I'm going around and looking at like, okay, how am I expanding my own wellness practices and experiencing new teachers and new healers and new practitioners. So now instead of going to the same chiropractor all the time, like when I go to a new city and I need a chiropractor, I have to find the best one. And I have a great network. So I'm like, do you know anybody in this city that does this? And I found some remarkable people as a result. And then as a result of that, now these are the people that will get added to this network and be a part of this community and bring their gifts, and it makes it so much more enriching. So as I'm going around the country, as I'm going around the world, I'm experiencing, and it's very experiential for me, the way that this is coming about, and it happens very naturally now that at least every other day, if not every day, somebody says, "Hey, you need to know this person. Hey, I want to introduce you to this person." And I'm finding they're just popping up literally all over the world. So it's very exciting, and people are like, when you're ready, I have a whole group of people that I want to invite to this community, that I want to invite to this network. So it's needed, and you can feel the energy of it. Like people do want to be connected. They do want to share with each other. They do want to get their practices out there, and their life's work being preserved and passed along. So it's
No,
happening.
I think it's beautiful, and it sounds like really this path is unfolding before you. You know, it's for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear is a phrase that's coming to mind as we have this conversation, and it's not unlike a lot of traditional martial arts who sometimes those styles die with the master and they weren't able to pass it on for lack of finding a student, right? And they have a lot of the same infrastructure issues, even though martial arts is one of the most commercially viable businesses in the world. Just look at UFC, right? And yet, even
Right.
then, and then you talk about the travel with your digital nomad experience that you're having right now. It's like a comedian learning that the material that worked in Los Angeles isn't working in Idaho, and I need to switch the material up, the language up, and not only that, how many clubs are there in LA versus in Idaho, right? And so there's a lot of corollaries that I can see being pulled into this conversation that just shows how much the infrastructure that I believe you're going to build is needed for something like this. And it can only have happened from you first having your experience and in the field that you're in with traditional healthcare, plus your bent for entrepreneurship to come into a world that they kind of have their own pockets, and they lean on you for that experience of entrepreneur plus the traditional structures and how that's all like it's a really uniquely qualified experience that is required to be able to pull all this together and to be able to speak everyone's language and understand what makes a good practitioner versus someone that doesn't, and then having the wherewithal to go, and there's a few things we may need to change about how it's being presented, but overall it's going to be good for everyone. And you continue your digital nomad journey. This needed to happen. This conversation about it needed to happen. Um,
Absolutely, and to your point in the beginning too is as we're in the world that we're in right now, and things are rapidly changing, and AI is coming in, and people are nervous about what's happening. It's having a little bit of you know to a little bit of courage, to be brave, to kind of look at what am I doing and what is my contribution to the world, and what are the experiences that I've had, and if you've been open to these experiences, because part of it is just looking at what's out there, and just having your eyes open. Like I said, this isn't I never planned to do this, right? If you asked me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I would never have thought this would be where I would be in my life right now. But it's you kind of take the opportunities as they're coming, and I think you had said, people are holding on for dear life to whatever they have right now, but let go and have a little bit of faith that that, where you're going to land is going to be somewhere that you've been led to at this point. So, um, I have fear all the time. Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, I could be, I could be going back into some corporate job and being some, VP of some Fortune 500 company and, doing that. But I did that experience already. Like, I already had that experience, and it got me to here. And it's like, do I want to go backwards, or do I want to take all of these different building blocks of all of these years and all these experiences and put them together into something that's going to be more impactful and something that's going to push forward, as opposed to like leaning back to something I'm more comfortable with. So I think that's part of it too, is being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
And you have an uncanny ability to be in tune with yourself. I'm sure it came with a lot of work. For people who aren't necessarily so clear, do you have any exercises that you do, like whether it's journaling, creating a timeline? There's a number of things that career people have said. Career coaches who have told people like create a timeline and see where the through line is for all that. Or was it really just all instinct for you as you moved along and kind of like hopped on, or have you ever actually taken the time to take stock? And how do you, someone like you, who's had both the major corporate, the entrepreneurial bent, and now stepping into a world where you could blend all these things together, how do you sort of navigate those things? Because there are people who are listening potentially who are like, how am I gonna, I work at a grocery store. What experiences do I have? Like how can you, people don't they take themselves for granted a lot of the times. So what do you do to keep yourself from taking yourself for granted?
So to answer your question, it's a blend of all of the things that you said, right? I do some things where, once a year, once every year and a half or so, I actually do like I do take stock. I do sit down. I do kind of do a vision board. I do kind of look at, what are the themes in my life? What are the values that I, like what's important to me in my life? What do I want to contribute? So I do something a little bit more formal. I would say every year, year and a half. And I'm a part of some different mastermind groups and things that like we encourage each other and help each other to do these things. But a big part of it too is I've built over the years a great spiritual mental practice, which energetic practice where I do yoga and I do meditate. I mean, I even 3 minutes in the morning before I get out of bed, before I even get up, I open my eyes, I kind of like center myself in my body, and I kind of just like bring myself present, and it makes a big difference. It really makes a big difference. So I think part of it is just having little practices. And everybody thinks like, oh, if I'm going to meditate, I've got to, do it for 20 or 30 minutes or an hour, and I've got to sit in cross legs, and I need to like, put my hands in in a certain pose, and no, 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 no. In fact, I've been coaching a lot of people, like meditation is whatever puts you into that state of calm where you can be introspective. So for some people it's listening to your favorite music, some people it's drawing, painting, writing, doing something creative. Some people it's taking a walk in nature. Some people it's going to the gym and doing a workout. Some people it is doing yoga. Some people it is sitting cross-legged. So all of these things are practices that get you there. And I think if you really, a lot of people reflect, um, that, oh, what you said, I work at a grocery store. Like, what experiences have I had? I've coached a lot of friends over the years who are looking for a new job, who are looking for a new direction in their career. And the first thing I tell them is like, don't think about your job in terms of what the job is. I had a friend who was a very high up in the marketing of a major law firm in the world. And she'd only ever worked in the legal field. And she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. She's like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of working with lawyers, like shockingly.
Fair
She's like,
enough.
I want to do this. And I said, well, and she's like, but I have a resume that just looks like I'm just like a marketing person for law firms and I don't want to do it anymore. And I said, no, like take a step back and look at what are the actual skills that you've acquired over the years. Like she could put on major events and run them flawlessly. And I said, that's operational, that's marketing. Like anybody, like a lot of places are looking for people who can run a major event. She did business development. She was able to like really listen and understand what people's needs are and translate it into a message that got them to engage. I said, what industry, what company wouldn't want that? And she was able to work with difficult people, right? Think about lawyers, like at a big law firm, a big major
Even
worldwide law
lawyers
firm,
don't want
right?
to talk to lawyers anymore. Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk to a lawyer, right? So sorry to all my legal friends, but the point is like you know, there's a lot of ego that she had to navigate. I said, and you do it remarkably well. So like, so I said, once you can take and get out of the situation and really look at what are the things that you have done and the experiences you have. So going back to the grocery store, right? Like customer service, right? You have organizational skills, right? There's certain things that come underneath the job title that are skills that are transposable and translatable in any job in any industry. And if you can figure out what those are, that's where your real value is. And you tell the story around those skills and around your experiences, as opposed to like what I worked in a grocery store, which is relatively meaningless. So, you know, my advice is as you're looking ahead at like what do you want to do, what are you really good at? What are the parts of your job, whether you're working in a law firm or you're working in a grocery store, that light you up and light up the people around you? And then those are things that you could take. Those are the things that you can take and package up and put anywhere, pretty much in any industry, in any company, whether it's an entrepreneurial venture or whether it's a large corporation. So it's just finding those things that you're really good at, those skills, and what lights you up, and taking it on the road.
I mean, you're speaking to something that a lot of people, again, then there's been this common thread in our own conversation. You have the uncanny ability to translate um, any realm into what would sound corporate, professional, or entrepreneurial, as opposed to just mystical and whimsical and otherworldly. And so it makes sense to me that when people come to you, you go, well, you've got to look at the holistic experience that you've had as opposed to just it's underselling it to say you worked at a grocery store when you understand how to navigate an entire stock room, how to look at the quality of product and whether or not it's going to expire, how to navigate difficult people when it comes to money. And it's a barcode scan. I'm not punching in the cost of the thing. You looked at it before you picked it up and put it in your cart. Navigating all that and then working with a team on a scale that most grocery stores have, right? And understanding the quorum that's required of those things. All those carry over, and it's on the individual to take stock of all that and to be able to translate that into language that would then position them for an interview with any other company and say, look, you can look at it that way, but here's why I'm going to be valuable is that I didn't look at it as just a grocery store job. And I can see the way this carries over. And I'm glad that you pointed all that out because it's super important to see that. So with that said, and we could go on this forever. I want to roll out the red carpet for you, Jeff. What do you want people to do? What do you want them to know about what you're doing? And where do you want them to go to connect with you as they've now had the opportunity to see what you're about to build?
Well, alavivo.com is the website. It's up and running today. It's still in its fledgling form, but every week something new is being added and built off of it. But like any entrepreneurial venture, it's like what you see today is going to look very different if you look at what Airbnb looked like it when it launched and what it looks like it today, or someone reminded me though of Craigslist. So Craigslist still looks like it did in 1992 or whenever it launched.
Somehow it works.
But
Somehow it works.
somehow it works. So the message there was like sometimes you find the formula and you just stick with it. But yeah. But that being said, as a practitioner, as somebody that's doing a wellness practice and guiding other people through these different pieces, like sign up now. The community is building behind the scenes. The initial focus is on that, and then when we hit critical mass, we're going to open it up to the people who are seeking that holistic well-being. So there's a place where you can kind of like be on that waiting list and be ready when we open that door, which will hopefully be within the next few months here, as we hit the critical mass. Like I said, people are kind of showing up because I think there's a need, and when there's a need, people do show up, and so it's there. And I wanted to make one other comment too, because I think it'll tie something you said at the beginning when you introduced me to like what you just said right now. It's that you said that I'm a thought partner. And I like that term because I don't think of myself as a consultant. I don't think of myself as a coach, because I don't come in and tell people what to do. I don't tell people what's right or wrong for them. And I think this is a really important message. And I think it's a great way to end the conversation that we're having as well, is I think most people have in them what they need to be successful. I think most people have in them what they need to be healthy. I think most people just are empowered. Our bodies, our minds are very powerful things. And I think we just get clouded. And so the way I approach it, and as you said, is like, I just listen to people. I listen very intently. And then I'm able to come back and reframe the information and present it back to them in a way that I'm not providing really any new information. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of my own experience in because, I've had a very rich experience, a lot of very rich experiences in my life. But I really just try to reframe things back so that people can hear what they already know, but in a different way. And so that's what this is about. I mean, this is about anything that we've talked about today is really about the idea of having a thought partner, somebody that you can talk about of like, I'm in a grocery store, but I want to go work in a law firm, or I am trying to figure out how to deal with a situation that I have right now in my health, and it just needs to be reframed, and it's just a lot of it exists within each of us as individuals, but it's who can really get us to see and hear and trust what we already have done, what our own experiences are, what we already know, what we already feel, what's already innate within us. So that's what my message is.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, this podcast itself is a thought partner. It's going to tie a lot of things into for people just by being a part and listening to the conversation. Jeff, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. I mean, it's been a long time coming. You and I doing some kind of anything, like any kind of work together. I'm glad it was this conversation because I do think that there is a significant requirement for something like what your vision holds. And I'm grateful that I got to be a part of that early conversation for it. So thank you for stopping by.
Yes, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad we finally got the chance to do this in a more formal way as well.